Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Happy Thursday. Welcome to Rise of the GM Lessons. Wanted to take a minute to just let you all know that we did need to take a break today from recording as normal with our normal episodes, but we'll be back next week, jumping in and hitting that kind of schedule that we've released. So you can be looking forward to that next week at our normal time, live on YouTube, and then it again drops to Spotify and goes to Apple Music and those kind of things. So today, really briefly, I wanted to talk for a few minutes into kind of this idea of the GM lessons idea that I've been doing over the last several weeks. Again, not something that is necessarily about me teaching something, but it's more about things that I have been learning, and I do say that like in the present tense. It's a continual thing, not just something like, oh, I learned this a long time ago and I put it into practice. But I feel like there's a lot of GMing for me that is in constant like improvement and trying to improve and learn from mistakes that I've made and things like that. So just wanted to share a little bit specifically about like items and magic items. And I know that can be a really broad thing, and there's a lot of different ideas. It could be pretty subjective depending on your game and what you like to have at your table, how you like to deal with magic items, whether you like to homebrew things or go straight by the book, whether you like to have high magic or low magic. Not really talking into that so much today, but a few things that I just feel like I've learned over time. Maybe things that I've like feel like I've done wrong or like learned from kind of in the mix. One of the things that I feel like I have not always done well and have tried to learn from in the last years is like giving out too many magic items, either all at once or just over time. And I love to be generous with my table. I like to help people improve. I like to, give things out when maybe somebody's like really interested in buffing a certain aspect of their character, or they're really like excited about this idea of having a flaming sword or like whatever that is. I always love to be able to like help out with that as the GM, and I think there's a good place for that. I also tend to like make a lot of things available. So if people are in a city and it's like we have all this gold to spend, I'm pretty tend to be pretty easy with like, yeah, these people have the ability to make or sell you the things that you want. And I think there's a place for that. I am not saying at all don't do that, but I think sometimes I have been too far on the like giving out and making things available side to where items almost become just a little bit like it's like overpopulated. It's like there's so many things rattling around in these people's bags that they're carrying around that they don't even remember that they have these really sweet things that could do some good stuff. So I think like watching the balance of that sometimes is like a really important thing. Not like over complicating things by having so many items in the mix for players. So that's the thing that I feel like I've like had to work through at times and meet the players where they are. Some people really want that. Some people don't care as much, and trying to work that out and bring good balance to it. The other thing I think I've like struggled with at times and I'm trying to learn is focusing too much on combat oriented items and forgetting about like other things that maybe are a little more just utility or have a lot more variation to them or could be used in places other than combat. It's really easy for me when I'm thinking about like a magic item in the like situation of like giving it to, finding it in like a pile of loot or being able to buy at a magic shop. Sometimes it's like I tend towards like the +1 sword, or like this really great armor that lets you do certain things, or a ring of protection, or this cloak that makes you invisible, or like whatever that is. Those things tend to be more combat oriented. Now, can they be used in other places? Absolutely, but I tend to like focus more on that and forget about more utility items, which is weird because as a player, I actually tend to want the more utility items. I want the jar that can make 5 gallons of mayonnaise every day for no apparent reason. I want the dust that can like cover up all your tracks and make you, not seen, and those kind of things. I want the strange little gizmo that does really nothing useful but can be a cool RP item. So I think like sometimes I've went the opposite way with my players and worried about like combat oriented items and loot, and also just like the idea of like giving out way too many things and kind of overpopulating the game with magic items to where they're not as that important to people. Instead, what I'm trying to do now, and again, both those things, there's places for them, and if that's how you like to do stuff, like that's totally cool. But for me, one of the things I'm trying to do, kind of contrary to those things now, and have been starting to work towards, is like 3 kind of things. One is like giving out items that would not normally be what people are like going for. So and that's, again, that's subjective, right? But there's certain things where like the really sweet weapon tends to be something that players are going to want. Other items like Dust of Dryness, is, and I'm going to come back to that later, but that's something that maybe it's a little more utility. There's a certain kind of player that likes that, but a lot of times maybe it's going to get left on the shelf. Or like some sending stones or whatever it is, these like smaller things. I've always loved in D&D the like feather tokens, or like the fan token or the tree token, like that kind of stuff. Didn't make a lot of sense to use in a lot of places, but you could have a lot of fun with those things. And so one of the things is like a GM giving out loot and making things available to people. I really liked the idea of giving stuff to the players that isn't the normal, and letting it play out and see like what they do with it. In my recent game, the players came across a kind of fey creature that was just really there to populate the world, kind of interact with them. If they wanted to follow up some leads with it, they could, but otherwise it was kind of just to have a cool interaction, a fun kind of goofy interaction. And it wanted to trade like these items for other stuff. And one of the things was like the spice of tastiness, like, and it literally is pretty much just like good spices, but it had a little magic quality to it. And there was another one that was like, if somebody ate it, it would cause some like issues with them and give them disadvantage on some things. So, are these things like super important to a combat? No. Are they gonna like fulfill some sort of quest in the world? Probably not. But they were fun, and both of those things have been used in various ways, and not even the way that I expected them to be used. So being able to give out items that would maybe not normally be like a bought item can be a lot of fun. Another example of that, I talked about the Dust of Dryness. Josh, who actually brought this idea up about talking about magic items today, in our game that Matthew runs, Dormant Mind, has a modified version of Dust of Dryness. It can take on a lot more water than rules is written, and it can spray out a lot more water than rules is written. And he has had Kairos, his character has had this Dust of Dryness for a while, had it filled, and was waiting, to use it, and turned the tide of a gigantic battle by causing this like tidal wave to come out of it. Again, it's modified, it's not rules as written, but that was a thing where it's like, this isn't that big of a thing. It kind of sucked some water out of a situation one time when we needed to make water disappear, and then changed the course of a battle with this. And that was a combat situation, but it was totally out of the box. And that's kind of the second thing I want to talk about in that is, one, this idea of maybe giving out stuff that's not the norm, not normally what people are going to buy. So you can go down through the tables, whether it's D&D or Pathfinder or if you're looking at maybe some other games that are a little bit less crunchy even in that realm, there are ways to do that. But the second piece is to actually reward the creativity of the players when they come up with cool ideas. And I would say, again, this is subjective and it's not how everybody always wants to play, but I would say even being able to flex the rules at times for the sake of the cool factor is like a really fun piece of that, and can like really pay a lot of dividends when it comes to just your general play time around the table and enjoyment. So, in the case of the Dust of Dryness, that's not exactly how that would work, but there was this moment of this is actually a modified version of this and it can do these things differently. So when I brought up the pot that has the mayonnaise, when the player decides to pull out the pot, they can create that stuff and take 5 gallons of mayonnaise and spread it all over the floor, causing this big slick patch for the monsters to run through and fall down on. Like, that's a really cool piece of like kind of disgusting, but also, it's a way that we can, like, as GMs, reward the creativity and say, yeah, that actually does cause this problem for these creatures that were chasing you. So you're going to get bonuses in this way. Sometimes it's not even related to mechanics in that way. It's just a fun RP point. But I think that whole thing about like rewarding creativity when people use items out of the box is a really, really great thing. So that's an encouragement I have for you is, one, to make things available or even found that are not the normal. The second thing is when they use those, or even if they use like a pretty normal, mundane, commonplace kind of magic item in a new way, to reward those things and to encourage that kind of play style, because they're thinking creatively and they are thinking out of the box and they're having a good time doing it. But then like the third kind of piece to this is a little bit different, and it's something I've seen people do. I've seen Matthew do it really well, is this idea of there being items in the game that players get a hold of that develop or evolve or level up as they go. And I know this actually has been part of the game, especially like in D&D and Pathfinder, this idea of like relics that can level up with the character. And I've really enjoyed that in the Dormant Mind with Matthew. We have these items that we've been collecting and trying to keep out of the hands of people who would have nefarious reasons to use them. But they are things that kind of, as we get more powerful, as we get more experienced, they unlock and have either greater effect with the things they do or like new abilities that come off with them. I think that's a really cool thing that you could do pretty easily with an item that's found by your players. So whether it's like a ring or a book or a wand or some armor or just a magic stone, that these things are, as they go from level 5 to 7 to 12 to 20, that there are more things that they can do with that. And I think that's a really fun way to, one, also make like leveling up a little more interesting, or even just the experience of the game. If you're maybe playing an RPG that's not so much about leveling up, there still can be some advancement because this item that they're holding on to suddenly is unlocking more powers or more abilities or whatever that is for them to use. So again, things I'm learning is to not like oversaturate the game or the players more so with items, because they just forget about them. And if you have done that, like me, reminding them, hey, you should go through your bag, kind of do an audit of your stuff and to pay attention to maybe how you could make use of those things or offload them or give them to another player or like, whatever that looks like. So watch giving out too many things and not oversaturating it. And also not just like focusing on combat items only, but instead the thing I'm trying to do and trying to learn to do a little better again is to give out items that are not the normal, to reward the creativity within that. And finally, to give some items that maybe can grow with the characters. So hopefully that's helpful. Again, people play differently, but that's some stuff I've been working through and trying to do a little bit better on and grow in that way. And I hope that you can grow in your gaming. So thanks all for joining us today, for joining me. And again, we'll be back next week going into a normal episode. Have a good one.